pass on his creation myth. Really?
Well,
now you're shifting now you're shifting the burden of proof, because now you have convinced yourself that that answer is likely, and you won't change your mind until somebody shows you evidence that absolutely contradicts it. And you don't think that that is a dishonest argument?
I've looked this stuff up, and I haven't found anything about the Chinese encountering.
Well, that's an argument from laziness.
Yeah, I mean, you've taken argument from incredulity to argument from laziness. You haven't found anything, therefore you're shifting the burden of proof to other people. You haven't established...
I'm really not trying to shift the burden of proof to anybody.
You did.
I personally wasn't able to find anything. I'm open to being proven wrong. I wasn't personally able to find anything, but
that's a shifting of the burden of proof. To say that you're open to being proven wrong, and that as soon as somebody presents you with evidence that contradicts it, that's a shifting of the burden of proof. The only justifiable position you're in at this point is to say, I have no idea whether or not this is sufficient evidence.
And that's the most honest thing to say.
To say that, you know, divine intervention is the best explanation, but yet you have managed to conclude the exact opposite. That it's more likely that the stories, these grand supernatural stories are true, and that this God somehow preserved this story through one lineage, than that some person met another person and told stories. Something that we know has happened all the time since the beginning of our ability to talk. And yet you've concluded that it's more likely that there is a God who intervened. And I don't understand how you can defend that. That's like saying, I know my mom has done my laundry every week in my entire life, but I believe that the clothes that are folded and sitting on my bed are from sky pixies who came in and scrubbed them last night. That is the absurdity of what you're saying. And it's more possible, and until somebody shows me proof that my mom actually did the laundry, I'm going to keep on believing about the laundry pixies.
Well, all I can really say is, I mean, I can only repeat what I've already just said. I mean,
which would be a really bad idea.
Yeah. Like I said, I personally find it coincidental.
Yeah, me too.
That these things, and I say the common source goes all the way back to Adam. But if somebody can, like I said, if somebody can actually show me that the common source was long, like after that, you know, I don't know, just something that doesn't agree with a biblical history.
Yeah.
Then
so you bought into something you like, and until somebody shows you different, you're going to cling to it.
I think the point to make here is that often the most honest and honorable answer is to say you don't know, and use that as a kind of a kick in the butt to say, well, I'm going to go learn more, and I'm going to hopefully, you know, make decisions based on good evidence and that sort of thing. If I care about it enough, if it matters, then go forward and learn. But it's generally dishonest to pick an answer and then try to you know, conduct some sort of horse race where you're racing the answer you like the most against other answers. It's better to withhold your belief until you have proper evidence.
I'd really like to get to the core of it, because this baffles me. This goes back to the, you know, do you care whether or not your beliefs are true, which I'm going to end up repeating a lot. I'd like to find out how it is that a reasonably intelligent person can look at all this and say, wow, I just can't believe that this happened any other way than some mystical, supernatural convergence of events type thing.
Well, it could be ignorance about, I mean, you know, the fact that we see patterns in things. We are
But
programmed.
he's denying that. He's saying that our propensity to see patterns is less likely than that this pattern is true. I don't understand how anybody can say that they care whether or not something's true, be presented with all of this information, and then say, I think it's more likely that the story is true and a God did it. I mean, that is such a perversion of reasoning to me that I cannot possibly grasp it. It is as absurd as
maybe
thinking
God
that,
does everything.
that fairies have done your laundry. It is, and it's, by the way, it's special pleading, because you could be presented with 1,000 other coincidences like that from hundreds of other religions, and your criteria for determining whether or not something is true would force you to accept all of them. How do you deal with that?
Can you give me an example of something like that?
Off the top of my head, I'm not going to give you another example because I don't find this one particularly compelling. I mean, why? Okay, list any of the similarities between, for example, Jesus and the hundreds of other messianic claims, or the Athanasius or not Athanasius, Apollonius, or the similarities between. There are stories that have those similarities. You have not heard of any of those?
Well, I mean, I have heard of Apollonius. I remember watching this National Geographic special on him.
So what reason would you have for rejecting either the Apollonius stories or the Jesus stories?
Well, I have my personal reasons for
believing. Yeah, okay, we're done. We're done, Hal.
To be convinced by it.
We're done. We're done, because you won't argue honestly. You just went straight to, oh, I have my personal reasons, which tells me you don't give a damn about whether or not something's true. And we've already tried over and over again.
It's just that it's a long story, and I don't think you guys really want to waste all your time listening to it.
Probably not. I'm interested in actual truth, and somebody who can actually demonstrate truth. And I don't think that your story is going to get there if you began by talking about Chinese characters and how it's so unlikely that these Chinese characters could have come about by any other reason than that the story is true and that God dictated or influenced the Chinese people with the Jewish creation myth. I mean...
Well, if I can find evidence in support of another theory, this is the one I'm going to default to for now.
Oh, now we get to the crux. You're saying, I'm going to accept this until I find better evidence of something else.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you not see the problem with that?
No, because I think the circumstantial evidence in support of this is pretty sufficient for now.
I'll tell you the problem with that. I'm going to accept that lightning bolts come from Zeus until I find out better information. I'm going to accept that bumps on people's foreheads tell me what's going on inside their heads until I get better information. I'm going to accept that diseases are caused by demons and devils and we need to engage in bloodletting until I find better information. The problem is that you've accepted an answer without sufficient evidence, and you're willing to be wrong about it while running around thinking you're right, and that makes you an idiot. That means that you don't care about what's actually true. You care about assuaging your discomfort with not knowing. You are so uncomfortable by not having an answer that you're willing to latch on to whatever seems most intuitively reasonable to you and comforts you. And that's not a pathway to truth at all.
I personally don't see a problem in just assuming one answer is true until evidence is presented to suggest otherwise.
Yeah. I know you don't, and I don't know why you don't. And I wish I could find out, because we could fix the whole world as soon as we figure out why you don't. I can't explain it. I can't explain it.
Scientists all over the place do the same thing.
What?
Scientists all over the place do the same thing.
No, they frickin' don't. Do not pretend.
One huge example is the origin of the Big Bang. A lot of scientists will say the
shut the
multiverse
fuck up,
is the
Hal.
origin of the
Let
Big
me
Bang,
finish.
even though there's no evidence of a multiverse.
Hal, do not pretend that what you're doing is even remotely comparable to science. Science doesn't just latch on to whatever feels good and then hopes maybe later on we'll find the truth. Science gives explanations and doesn't assert absolute certainty at any point. And what they do is they give the best explanation that is supported by evidence, that is subject to peer review. They build models that actually make testable predictions that prove useful. You're not doing anything remotely like that. And the fact that you have deluded yourself to thinking that science does this too is absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. You not only don't care whether or not something's true, you have poisoned your own mind to the extent that you have no pathway to understanding how to find out if something's true. And the one thing that can be used to get us as close as possible to a true understanding, you denigrate it to being the